The old farmhouse smelled of lavender and sun-baked wood, a scent that always made me think of Grandma. I rocked gently in her creaky chair, the one she used to knit in by the fireplace, surrounded now by dust motes dancing through the late afternoon light. Across from me sat Uncle Richard, Aunt Patricia, and their perfectly groomed children Bethany, Marcus, and Sarah, each of them wearing varying degrees of anticipation and thinly veiled entitlement. I was the odd one out, as always. My name is Emily Turner. I'm 32. Until last week, I was a financial analyst at Morgan Stanley. That job, along with most of my confidence, vanished in a surprise downsizing. Now, I was unemployed, single, and sitting in my late grandmother's home waiting to be handed, most likely, the family sympathy scraps. Mr. Patterson, Grandma's longtime lawyer, cleared his throat and adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. "Let's begin," he said. I, Margaret Rose Turner, being of sound mind. The usual legal boilerplate washed over us like static. Bethany checked her nails, Marcus tapped away on his phone, and Sarah, sharp-eyed Sarah, watched with the cold precision of someone assessing assets. Uncle Richard's eyes darted repeatedly to the antique grandfather clock in the corner, an heirloom worth more than my former yearly salary. Aunt Patricia's fingers twitched against her designer handbag like she was mentally already spending whatever came next. To my son Richard and his wife Patricia, Mr. Patterson continued, I leave my securities portfolio valued at approximately $2.1 million. A pleased gasp. Uncle Richard looked smug enough to burst. Aunt Patricia nearly cried from joy. Their matching tennis bracelets sparkled as she clutched his hand. To my grandchildren Bethany, Marcus, and Sarah, Mr. Patterson said, I leave the vacation properties in the Hamptons and Martha's Vineyard to be divided equally. Smirks and whispers. Of course, they had spent every summer in those homes, while I stayed behind with Grandma, learning how to patch fences and rotate crops. Then came the pause, and to my granddaughter, Emily, the air thickened. All eyes turned toward me, expecting, what? Her teacup collection? A dusty upright piano? I leave my farm, including all 200 acres, the main house, and its contents. The room fell silent for 3 seconds. Then Uncle Richard erupted into laughter. The farm? That run-down pile of weeds? He howled. Oh, Mother, you really had a sense of humor. Bethany tilted her head, oozing condescension. Well, I guess you can play country girl since Wall Street didn't work out. I said nothing, my cheeks burning. The farm hadn't been worked properly in years. The house was falling apart, and the property taxes alone could eat up what little savings I had left. To them, I'd been given a burden, but Mr. Patterson wasn't finished. There is also one more item, he added. Emily is to receive the contents of safety deposit box 247 at First National Bank. The box is not to be opened until 1 week after this reading. That wiped the smirks off their faces. What's in it? Sarah asked, her voice clipped. The will doesn't specify, Mr. Patterson replied smoothly. Now if you'll all sign here. The next hour passed in a blur of signatures, uncomfortable silences, and passive-aggressive farewells. As my relatives filed out with their millions and vacation homes, Uncle Richard lingered. You should sell it to us, he said, voice fox casual. The farm, I mean. We'll make you a fair offer. Save you the trouble. I looked up at him. The memories came fast, Grandma teaching me to tend the soil, to identify the old property markers, to appreciate the land's long, often overlooked history. I think I'll hold on to it for now, I said, his jaw clenched. Emily, be reasonable. You're not a farmer. You can't even hold down a real job. The words stung more than I let on, but I met his stare. It's mine now, Uncle Richard, and Grandma wanted me to have it. Your funeral, he said coldly. When they were gone, the house was quiet again, save for the wind pushing gently through the window panes. I walked slowly through the old rooms, my fingers grazing faded wallpaper, built-in bookshelves, and the door to Grandma's study locked, as it had always been. Why had she left me the farm? And what was in that safety deposit box? Over the next few days, I moved out of my apartment, unpacked my life into the dusty farmhouse, and made a long list of repairs. I didn't know the first thing about running a farm, but I knew how to work. I knew how to dig deep. Then the phone rang. Miss Turner? This is Amanda Chen from First National Bank's Property Division. We were reviewing your grandmother's estate and came across some irregularities in the historical land records. We believe you should come in. My heart kicked. Irregularities? Yes, something quite unusual that may significantly impact the value of your inheritance. Bring a lawyer, if you can. 2 days left until I could open the safety deposit box. As I hung up, I glanced out the window at the fields that stretched to the distant woods, golden in the evening sun. Grandma always used to say, timing is everything. Something told me this farm wasn't nearly as worthless as my family believed, and I was about to find out just how wrong they were. 2 days later, I stood in the quiet, polished viewing room of First National Bank. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead as I stared down at safety deposit box 247. Amanda Chen from the bank's property division gave me a reassuring nod. Beside her stood Mr. Patterson, my grandmother's longtime attorney, who looked as calm as ever. I held the key in my trembling hand. Ready, Miss Turner? Amanda asked gently. I nodded, slid the key into the lock, and opened the box. Inside were 3 items: a leather-bound journal, a USB drive labeled land documentation, and a thick yellowed envelope marked Property Records 193 to Mr. Patterson stepped closer. I believe these may clarify why your grandmother chose you, he said. I opened the envelope first. Inside was a detailed map drawn in fine pen strokes, with annotations tracing back nearly a century. Amanda pulled out a folder of her own. This is what triggered our alert, she explained. Our historical survey revealed your farm sits on what was once the original Northwestern Railway junction, decommissioned during the Depression and forgotten in most public maps, but not in the private development world. I blinked. So, Amanda smiled. So your land doesn't just sit on old farmland. It connects 3 major transportation routes: rail, highway, and freight, making it one of the most strategic undeveloped parcels in the region. Developers have been eyeing it for years, but your grandmother refused to sell. I opened the journal next, hands trembling. The first page bore my grandmother's elegant cursive. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, then the plan worked. You've always seen the heart of things, even when others only saw the surface. While the rest of the family chased titles and vacations, you stayed by my side. You saw the farm for what it was, not a relic, but a promise. And now, it's yours to fulfill. The tears came uninvited. I flipped to the next page. Inside the USB drive are the key documents: original railway contracts, mineral rights, and 10 years of development offers I turned down. The most recent, $120 million from Eden Properties. But I knew better. I wasn't just preserving the land, I was preserving our legacy. Now it's your move, but be careful. Your uncle knows more than he's let on. Timing, my dear, is everything. I stared at the USB like it was a bomb. Is this why you called me? I asked Amanda. Partly, she said, but there's more. The mineral rights beneath your land were never separated. If you check the 1955 geological surveys, you'll find high deposits of lithium and rare earth minerals. In today's market, that's a game changer. I sat down hard, heart pounding. My family thought I'd inherited a pile of dirt. Instead, I was sitting on one of the most valuable undeveloped tracts in the state. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. You should also know, your uncle has been quietly working with Eden Properties. We believe he intended to acquire the farm through you, or rather, from you, using pressure and fast cash. The pieces started clicking into place: his friendly offer to buy, his sudden urgency, his uncharacteristic presence at the will reading. Is there a way to stop him from interfering? I asked. Mr. Patterson nodded. Absolutely, but you'll need to act fast and smart. That night, I returned to the farmhouse with my head spinning. I opened Grandma's old study, dust still coating the shelves, and began digging through generations of records. And there it was, an entire folder labeled Turner Legacy, Community Proposal. Inside were development plans, business cards, community partnerships, even zoning correspondence. It wasn't just about land. Grandma had spent the last decade quietly building a blueprint for a sustainable community: green spaces, housing, a farmer's market, educational centers. It was brilliant and ambitious. The final document was a signed letter from Morrison Development Group. They'd offered a partnership, not a buyout. A proposal for joint development, with the family retaining controlling interest. She had written in the margin, "Not yet. Emily will know when the time is right." I let out a shaky laugh. Of course she had a plan. I emailed Morrison that night. Subject: Turner Farm Project Proposal Reinstatement. I believe now is the right time. Let's talk. The next morning, a text popped up on my phone. Uncle Richard, changed your mind about selling yet? Our offer still stands. Think carefully, property taxes won't wait forever. I smiled. Me, actually. I have a meeting with Morrison. Development tomorrow. They seem very interested. His reply came in seconds. Don't you dare. And then, we need to talk. Now. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked through the overgrown fields in the early morning light, the farmhouse behind me and the future ahead. The same soil I'd been told was worthless was worth tens of millions and something more. It was mine, and it was about to change everything. For years, I had felt like the family disappointment, the one with no titles, no beach house photos, no perfect marriage. But I had something else: resilience, vision, and a grandmother who had seen both. I turned to look back at the house. A place once filled with creaky silence, now pulsed with purpose. Grandma, I thought, I'm going to finish what you started. It didn't take long. By the time the sun crested the treetops the next morning, the rumble of tires on gravel announced my family's arrival. I stood on the farmhouse porch, arms folded, as Uncle Richard's black SUV pulled to a stop with a screech. He practically leapt out of the driver's seat, red-faced and fuming. Aunt Patricia followed, her makeup smudged like she'd been crying all night. The three cousins trailed behind them, for once silent and uneasy. You can't do this, Uncle Richard barked before he'd even reached the porch. Good morning to you too, I said, calm as ever. You're not seriously considering partnering with Morrison, he snapped. That land has complications. I tilted my head. You mean the old railway rights, the mineral deposits, or the development potential? Because to me, those sound like opportunities. His face paled. You don't understand, he said, quieter now, more desperate. There's more going on here than you realize. I stepped inside the house and gestured for them to follow. We gathered in Grandma's old sitting room, once filled with quiet tea conversations and laughter, now thick with tension. I understand. More than you think, I said, placing a stack of printed emails on the table. Including your correspondence with Eden Properties. 5 years worth. He froze. Aunt Patricia gasped. Bethany's eyes widened. Wait, Dad, you were. I found the records, I continued, on the USB drive. Grandma documented everything. Your repeated attempts to get her to sell, the backdoor offers from Eden, the kickbacks they promised you if you delivered the land within 30 days of her death. Uncle Richard dropped into a chair, defeated. You have no idea what you've just done. Oh, I think I do, I replied. I've just ensured Eden doesn't get their greedy hands on a single inch of this farm. You don't know what Eden is capable of, he whispered, voice suddenly small. They'll do whatever it takes. Then they'll learn I'm not as easy to push around as you thought. The silence in the room was suffocating. I turned to the others. Bethany, Marcus, Sarah, did any of you know about this? Bethany shook her head slowly. No, we just assumed you were given the land as, well, punishment. Sarah narrowed her eyes at our father. Is that why you wanted Emily to sell to us so badly? You were using us. I was trying to protect this family, he said, the lie barely hanging together. I stepped forward and laid a new folder on the table. Grandma's development plans. She had a vision, not just to protect the land, but to build something that would give back to the community. A sustainable neighborhood, schools, local markets, affordable housing, all while preserving the history of this land. And you think you can do this? Uncle Richard scoffed. I know I can, I said firmly. And I'm not doing it alone. I looked directly at Sarah. She always said you were the only one of them who might understand. Are you in? Sarah looked at the plans for a long moment, then back at me. Yes, I want to be part of this. Bethany spoke up next. Honestly, it's better than pretending to care about influencer marketing for overpriced handbags. Even Marcus, usually glued to his phone, looked interested. If we're building something real, something lasting, I want to help. I smiled, surprised and grateful. Aunt Patricia finally broke her silence. Your grandmother would be proud of this. Of all of you. Only Uncle Richard remained unmoved. This will blow up in your face. You don't have the experience, the money, the knowledge. No, I said, but I have the land, and Morrison has the rest. They're offering full infrastructure support, capital, and engineering expertise. In return, we retain oversight and controlling interest. His face twisted into a sneer. You're turning this into a charity project. I'm turning it into a legacy. I corrected. He stood, his pride unraveling with every breath. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when it fails. No, I said softly, I won't. The following week was a whirlwind. Contracts were reviewed, zoning meetings scheduled, and Morrison Development's architects toured the land. Their lead consultant shook my hand firmly. Your grandmother's vision was ahead of its time. We're honored to be a part of this. Word spread quickly, first among local news outlets, then across state media. The story of the worthless farm transforming into a model of sustainable living caught fire. Grants flowed in. Universities expressed interest in contributing. Research and outreach. Investors backed off, realizing the land was no longer for sale. It was now a cornerstone project. We restored the old barn into a community event center. The fields were cleared and prepped for gardens, with Sarah spearheading a program to teach children how to grow food. Marcus developed an app to connect residents to local farmers. Bethany, surprisingly resourceful, launched a sleek marketing campaign called Rooted in Legacy. As for Uncle Richard, he went quiet. The threat of public scandal kept him at bay, but he watched from a distance as his grip on the family's future slipped away. One evening, I returned to Grandma's study, now filled with blueprints and project binders. I sat at her desk and opened her journal one more time. Sometimes the world will call you foolish for believing in things they can't see. Let them. Build it anyway. I ran my hand across her words and whispered, We're building it, Grandma. You were right all along. The air smelled like cedar and fresh soil. Not the dusty kind from when I first arrived, but rich, living earth, tilled, nurtured, and full of possibility. The transformation had begun. The barn, once sagging and forgotten, now stood tall with new red siding and solar panels on its roof. Inside, reclaimed wood beams gleamed under warm pendant lights. It was now the Turner Community Hall, a space for gatherings, workshops, and local markets. Just like Grandma imagined, construction crews had broken ground on the first row of sustainable homes. The architecture was beautiful. Clean lines, wide porches, rainwater catch systems, and native landscaping. Each home bore a plaque, Rooted in Legacy Phase 1. Morrison Development stayed true to their promise. Their CEO, Laura Morrison, became a strong ally, impressed by the depth of Grandma's original blueprint and our team's relentless drive to make it real. She told me during one of our meetings, most people inherit land and sell. You inherited a mission. That's rare. The project was working not just logistically, but emotionally. It was healing us. Sarah proved indispensable. Her natural leadership with people helped ease the community into the changes. She started a youth gardening program and helped secure a grant for an environmental education center. Marcus surprised everyone by building a digital infrastructure for the community. His app connected residents to everything from local produce orders to solar usage stats. Touchy, efficient, and completely his idea, and Bethany, who once mocked me for being too plain to succeed, had blossomed into a passionate advocate for sustainable living. She launched a full media campaign highlighting the project. Her videos went viral. She even landed a profile in Architectural Digest, standing next to me in front of the restored farmhouse. I never thought I'd say it, but my cousins were becoming something close to partners. Even Aunt Patricia pitched in. She helped organize volunteer events and community dinners. The first one brought tears to my eyes. Tables stretched across the lawn, lanterns swaying in the breeze, laughter filling the same fields once dismissed as useless. But Uncle Richard remained distant. He didn't fight us anymore, not openly, but his silence was loud. He stayed away from planning meetings, declined every invitation, and rarely responded to family group messages. Still, I caught him once. Late one evening, I saw him parked near the edge of the property, staring out at the new development like he barely recognized it. His shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. A man watching his schemes unravel. I didn't approach him. Not then. Some reckonings take time. Instead, I focused on what Grandma had left in my hands. Her journal became my Bible. Every night, I read a passage before bed. Her wisdom kept me grounded, especially the parts where she admitted she'd once doubted herself too. That she had been called foolish, emotional, unrealistic. And yet, she built anyway. It's not about proving them wrong, she wrote. It's about building something so right, their opinions no longer matter. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same people who once laughed when I inherited the worthless farm were now begging to interview me about its rebirth. I sat with Laura Morrison one day on the newly completed Overlook platform, gazing out at the phase to development area. This, she said, sipping her coffee, is going to be studied for years. I smiled. It's just the beginning. She turned to me. You could stop now, sell your stake, cash out. You'd walk away with more money than you ever made in finance. I didn't hesitate. I'm not walking away. I'm building something that matters. For my family, for the town, for Grandma. She smiled. Good, because the governor wants to visit next month. They're considering the project for the State Sustainability Award. When I told the team, the reaction was instant. Bethany shrieked with excitement. Marcus started planning an app update, and Sarah drafted a guest list for a press tour. We were no longer just building homes, we were building history. But the real moment came quietly. I was walking the trails behind the property one morning when I spotted someone standing near the old oak tree Grandma and I used to sit under. Uncle Richard. He didn't notice me at first. He looked smaller somehow, not just physically, but diminished. When I stepped into view, he turned. It's beautiful, he said reluctantly. I didn't think it could be. I didn't think you could do this. I nodded. I know. I was wrong, he admitted. About you, about the land, about a lot of things. There was a long silence. I could have gloated. I could have reminded him of every cruel remark, every time he dismissed me as the failure of the family, but I didn't, because the truth was, I didn't need his apology. I'm not here to rub it in. I said, but if you ever want to be part of something real, there's still room. There always has been. He didn't answer, just stared out across the golden fields before walking away in silence. I stood there for a long while after he left, listening to the wind through the grass, the chirping of birds, the distant hum of construction equipment, building homes that would soon be filled with life. We were doing it, Grandma's dream, my dream, our family's redemption. And I knew, the real reveal hadn't happened yet, not fully, because soon, the world would see what we'd built, not just a community, but a legacy. The grand opening arrived on the first warm Saturday of spring. A gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers through the air as the Turner Legacy community welcomed its first residents. The farmhouse had been fully restored and now served as the official welcome center. In the front room, we kept Grandma's rocking chair her favorite seat, polished to a shine right by the window where sunlight filtered through lace curtains. That morning, I sat in it quietly, watching families arrive. Children skipped down gravel paths, couples admired garden plots, and new neighbors introduced themselves with hopeful smiles. It felt surreal. Just 1 year ago, my family had laughed in this very room, mocking me, mocking the inheritance, mocking the woman who dared to believe in a worthless farm. Now, it was the centerpiece of a nationally acclaimed development project. What was once mocked had become admired. What was dismissed had become a model, and I had become someone else entirely. Not Emily, the overlooked analyst. Not Emily, the poor cousin who couldn't hack it in finance. I was now Emily Turner, founder and executive director of the Turner Legacy Project, recognized by the governor for sustainable innovation and invited to speak at state summits. But more than titles or press, I was the granddaughter who kept her promise. The day began with a ribbon-cutting ceremony beneath the oak tree, where a bronze plaque now stood, in honor of Margaret Rose Turner, who saw not what the land was but what it could be. The mayor gave a short speech. Laura Morrison spoke next. Then it was my turn. I stood at the podium, notes in hand, heart thudding in my chest. I looked out at the crowd, dozens of families, local press, community leaders, and my own family, standing quietly in the front row. I was once told that this land was worthless. I began, my voice clear and steady, that it was a burden, a failure, that I had been handed a consolation prize for not succeeding in the real world. Some heads turned toward Uncle Richard. He didn't move, but my grandmother saw something different. She saw potential, purpose. She believed that wealth isn't just measured in portfolios or vacation homes, it's measured in what we build, in the lives we touch, in the legacy we leave. I paused. She left me more than a farm. She left me a vision. And today, we begin to honor that vision, not just for her, but for every generation that will come after. Applause rose around me. Not polite, not obligatory, genuine. Afterward, people toured the model homes, walked the restored trails, and browsed the first ever Turner Farmers Market. Bethany manned the welcome booth in a linen dress and sun hat, handing out community guides like she'd been born for the role. Marcus gave tech demos to city officials. Sarah organized a storytelling circle for local kids under the big oak, even. Aunt Patricia looked lighter, greeting guests with a smile I hadn't seen in years. Uncle Richard stood apart. Eventually, I approached him, the same way he once approached me after Grandma's reading. But this time, the power dynamic had shifted quietly, irrevocably. He looked at me with something almost like remorse. "She was right about you," he said softly. "No," I replied. "She was right about the land. I just finally saw it." He handed me a folded envelope. "I found this in my office. It was addressed to you. From her." I opened it when I got home, in the quiet of the farmhouse kitchen. "Dear Emily, if you're reading this, the seeds have sprouted. I know it wasn't easy. I know they underestimated you, they always did. But I never did. I saw the way you looked at this land. You understood it the way I did, not just as soil and fences, but as possibility. I'm proud of you, not just for building something, but for doing it with heart, for bringing the family back together, for proving that grace is stronger than pride. Never forget, the greatest revenge is living a life they never thought you could. And the greatest legacy is creating one they'll be proud to inherit. Love always." Grandma read it 3 times, tears sliding silently down my cheeks. She knew. All along. Weeks passed. The project flourished. We broke ground on phase 2. National outlets picked up our story. I was invited to speak at universities. People began calling the farm a case study in legacy-based development. But for me, it was simpler than that. Each time I walked the land, I felt her with me. In the garden beds, in the wind by the oak tree, in the echo of laughter from new homes built on old dreams. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat in the rocking chair again. Through the window, I saw kids riding bikes along the trail. A young couple unloaded groceries from the market. A grandmother planted herbs with her granddaughter. The farm had become something more, a community, a second chance, a quiet, powerful kind of justice, not the kind that seeks revenge to destroy, but the kind that proves they were wrong. That I was. Never weak, never a failure, just underestimated, and that was their mistake, because the girl they once dismissed had built something they couldn't even imagine, and now they'd have to live in the world she made.